Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible Teaching Snippet of the day. Well, today I want to talk to you a little bit more about my last video I uploaded. And I told you that I teach two very controversial subjects within Christianity. I teach universal restoration or reconciliation. Remember, Paul tells us that we are ministers of reconciliation. So the early church leaders, okay, and I'm talking from the first century, from James, Jesus's half-brother, in the early church in Jerusalem, all the way up through the 5th century. These early church leaders taught, yes, there is a judgment. Yes, there is a purification, a cleansing, even a punishment that is geared toward correction, not just throwing people in hell to burn them forever and ever. They didn't teach that, okay? They taught that God ultimately, love wins, basically, okay? God is going to reconcile and bring all people back to himself. Jesus said that. He said, if I be lifted up, I will drag and draw all unto me. Okay. So I teach that because the earliest church leaders and the original Greek writings of our scripture plainly teach that, and that's why all of them taught it and believed it, by the way, okay? And the other controversial subject that I teach, besides that the doctrine of eternal conscious torment in hell is a Roman Catholic lie, okay? And I teach universal reconciliation instead because the early church leaders did, yes. I also teach the same thing that the early church leaders from the 1st century forward taught, was for us as believers, followers of Christ, to walk in peace, nonviolent living here in the earth. And part of that nonviolent living is to be vegetarians. We do not kill and hurt animals because they're God's creation. Remember, God is love. And if we are love, we're going to love his creation. And you can't show me any picture of an animal being hung up and their throat slit and tell me that that's an act of love. No, that's an act of violence. Okay, so that's why I teach what I teach, because I went back to the earliest church teachings all the way to Acts, where it begins, where what they believed and what the men in that time frame all the way up through the 5th century taught. Now, I told you that when I was studying the hell doctrine, the false teaching about eternal conscious torment and hell, I kept seeing the same names pop up who were also teaching nonviolent living, not harming the animals, okay? And I gave you a list of some of the names. I'm going to go over it again today. This is a partial list. Athanasius, Clement of Alexandria, Origen, St. Basil, St. Jerome, John Chrysostom, okay? Those are just a few names, just to do a little bit of a recap, okay? Now, as I closed, I said that I wanted, this is something that people pull out of context. And this is the one that they love to say that the Bible teacher is teaching, teachings of demons, doctrines of demons, and that I'm evil. But when we go over to 1 Timothy chapter 4 and we actually read it in the original Greek writing, now we can come to understand that around the 5th century, this is what happened, this prophecy. And I want to show you that he was actually in this scripture prophesying a falling away of the church and its leaders mainly. Its leaders would begin to teach doctrines of devils, doctrines of demons, or pagan beliefs and pagan religions. Now, I have to prove to you that the doctrine of hell, eternal conscious torment, that was inserted into Christianity in the Roman Catholic Church through the teachings of St. Augustine in the 5th century, is actually a pagan myth, a pagan religion. But before I do, I want to show you this, and I want to read this to you, okay? And I'll show you this one first. This is from the Exegesis Companion Bible. And you'll see, right here I highlight it, it says, Paul prophesies apostasy, okay? And it was a prophecy that was fulfilled when the early church switched from its original teachings of reconciliation of all people, all things, all of creation, Jesus said, I make all things new, by the way. Okay, he's going to make all things new. It doesn't say I'm going to destroy what I can't make new. He's going to make all things new. Okay, so here in this version of it as well, we see, this is the Jonathan Mitchell, and I want to show you this. If you'll notice, I've underlined it in red right here, and I'm going to read this to you, but I've got it underlined where it talks about pagan teachings would enter into the church. So let me read this to you real quick. Now the Spirit is explicitly saying that within subsequent seasons, some of the faith will proceed standing off and away from the path, that was a capital P, the way of Christ, okay? And habitually holding toward wandering and deceptive spirits, okay? And teachings of demons. Teachings about and pertaining to demons, pagan religions. And here's what he's got highlighted in blue. His comment. This prophesied about the future institutionalization of the called out community and the introduction of pagan teachings, all of which later would come to be called Orthodox. Did you know that the Roman Catholic Church claims to be the Orthodox Church? And in truth, all of their teachings changed in that 5th century period. It started shifting in the 4th century through some wrong translations, but by the 5th century, it had taken off to get us to be wandering away from the path of what the early church taught from the 1st century, from Jesus, his brother, the elders, the apostles, and the early church, what they taught. We've been wandering away from that since the 4th and 5th century, when all of a sudden, when there were 6, if you want to call them seminary schools, okay, 5 of them taught reconciliation of all men, all people, all creation, all things. Well, one seminary in Rome decided that they would teach another viewpoint of the end, and that was going to be where people are judged and thrown in hell and tormented forever. Now, let me move into showing you this. I show this a lot, guys, okay? I want us to really pray and think about this. Jesus tells us to love our enemies, but then the church teaches that while I torture mine in hell forever. Now, people will say, no, people make the decisions to go to hell on their own. Well, somebody's got to keep the fire going, okay? So there's no way you can sit here and say that people are going to be in eternal conscious torment in hell forever at their own choice, if you're being honest. They didn't make a cognitive decision on that. They were confused or didn't understand. They heard the wrong message. They grew up in the wrong religion, whatever you want to classify that. But here's the thing. This fire that's going, supposedly for all eternity, who's keeping it going? And who's going to keep them in there? Because nobody, when they burn their hand, just holds it over the fire and says, oh, no, I chose this. I'm going to burn my hand from now forever. No, they don't do that. Somebody's got to hold them there, right? Okay, so one other thing I want to say about this. I want to quote you what Jesus said about loving your enemies, because this is a key understanding that God the Father and Jesus neither are going to torture anybody in an everlasting fire forever. Here you go. And Jesus says, but I say to you, be loving your enemies and be praying for the ones who are persecuting you. And I have to do that a lot because I'm teaching what the Lord has taught me. And people who've been indoctrinated by Roman Catholic doctrines are always angry with me. So I'm praying for those. But let me finish this. This is the key. And this is Jesus. He says, so that you may prove to be sons of your Father, capital F, your Father in the heavens. Jesus is saying that his Father forgives his enemies. Doesn't balance up, does it? Okay, now let me show you before I close out today where I read to you here where it says that the church leaders would wander off into pagan religions and use pagan teachings and myths that are untrue. Many translations actually use the word myths, pagan myths. Let me show you this. The word Hades, that has been translated as hell in our Bibles, in our New Testament, is the word hell now in many American English translations. That word is Hades, okay? See that right there? That's straight off the internet, and you can study that out. The word Hades, I'm going to tell you what it means real quick. The underground abode of the dead. That's what the word Hades means if you look it up in Strong's Concordance. It says the abode of the dead, the realm of the dead, the place of the dead, or the unseen realm. The realm of the dead, okay. The underground abode of the dead in Greek mythology, okay. Hades was also considered the Greek god of the underworld, okay. In Greek mythology, Hades is both the land of the dead and the god, Hades, who rules there. The realm called Hades, where he rules with his wife, is the region under the earth, okay, and the place of dead souls, the home of dead souls, right there. This is pagan mythology, pagan religion, and it was inserted into Christianity in the 5th century, okay? This is my teaching so far on this. I'm going to teach all of this. I'm going to keep going, but I want to start with the fact that Paul actually prophesied that at a later time, the leaders of the church would wander away into pagan mythology, pagan religions, and that is exactly what we're being taught right here in America about a good, loving God and Jesus, who says to love your enemies like my Father does. Forgive your enemies like my Father does. We've been misled and mistaught because Paul warned us that even though they don't know it today, our pastors and leaders in our churches, for the most part, are teaching pagan mythology and pagan religions. I love you, and I will see you again tomorrow probably. I love you. Bye-bye.